Hi, I'm Lee, and this is my podcast about making things, although at the moment the majority of it is about knitting. Well, today all of it is going to be about knitting. You can find me on Instagram as Instamatic louleigh, and I'm on Ravelry as louleigh, and I also make knitting bags, and you can find me on Etsy as shop louleigh if you fancy a knitting bag. I feel like I have lost my stride a bit because I have made a change that meant that I have made a change to my introductory bits, so everything is out of kilter. And it has to do with where I'm putting my show notes. I used to put them on my blog, but there's nothing else there and no one goes there, and basically it's just a short list of links of things that I talk about, so if you're interested in something you can go off and look up the other information. So I'm going to put those in the Ravelry group in the discussion thread for each episode, because I think that's where most of you go to say hello and interact and that sort of thing. So I thought it made sense to keep that all together. So yes, I'm going to have to think of some sort of new spiel for the beginning that just rolls off the tongue. Either that or just get used to what I just did. So yes, there is a louleigh Ravelry group, and it would be wonderful if you came along and introduced yourself and said hello. It's always nice to put names and faces and personalities together, so that would be really lovely. Yeah, there's an introductions thread there for that. So yes, or you can do it in the episode thread. I'm not really bothered, just come and say hello, that would be nice. We also have a what would you like to hear about thread, and some of you have put some really useful things in there. So I'm going to talk about some of those today. I'm sort of doing them out of order because some of you have actually suggested themes of things to talk about, so I might spread my answering over a number of episodes. So the next bit is what am I wearing, and I think I have talked about this jumper before because I wear it an awful lot. I'm actually feeling a bit scruffy today because I was going to head off to the allotment, but every time I open my front door it starts raining, and as soon as I come back inside and brew up it stops. So it's not raining now, but I bet you if I go outside it will. So I am in my allotmenting gear. And this is a jumper I made out of a new Lanark yarn. I have talked about it before. I designed it myself, and there are some fit issues and whatnot. And I shall link to the, is there a project page? I think it might have been pre-Ravelry. Ooh. Anyway, so there's no pattern or anything, it's just something I did off my own back and I find it really comfortable. I love the colour, so I wear it a lot. But anyway, if you've been here before, you've seen it before, so I shall not go on about it for too long. So this is the sock segment, and if you watched last time you would know that there was a tremendous hiccup with the sock segment. Basically the camera stopped filming halfway through, and so I waffled on for quite some time. So I decided it was better to cut out the whole segment and just talk about it again next time. But it has meant that I've decided to film the whole podcast in segments, so if something goes horribly wrong with one bit, I can still rescue the rest. So last time I had been part way through these socks, which are now finished. And so they're made out of Ren and Ollie yarn, and I've forgotten exactly which one it is, but it's the cupcake colourway. And the pattern is Darjeeling by Cat Bawdy, which was actually good fun to knit, just as there's lots of different elements, so you know, just nothing goes on and on forever. It's got a sideways toe construction. Let me grab the other one to show you. So the increases and decreases, well, the increases at the toe. It's a toe up sock, are quite close together. All the shaping happens in the centre here. And if I turn that round, you'll see that actually matches up exactly with the pattern, which is a nice little detail. And I find that this toe shaping actually fits toes quite nicely. These aren't for me, they were for a friend who has really little feet, and I have made them too big. So they aren't really for anybody at the moment. I'm going to put them in my gift basket and give them to somebody. The gusset shaping is really interesting. All the action, I hope you can see that, happens along the very bottom there. So there is actually a kind of a, you might see it better this way, a V shape along the bottom. Now the bit that you missed last time was where I found the pattern. I have this book called The Knitter's Book of Socks, which is a book by Clara Parks, and she is a marvellous writer. You never feel like she's trying to make up a word count or something, and she has a nice way of explaining, I guess, kind of technical things. Now I got this book after I had already purchased, or no, I was given Sock Architecture by Lara Neal, which is, sock architecture is about sock construction, and I wasn't sure I really needed this book as well, because I had kind of assumed it would be the same thing. But I do really like Clara Parks's books, and there were some lovely sock patterns in here, and it was a penny plus postage. So I thought I would treat myself, and actually this book is quite different because it talks about yarn construction and how that affects your socks. So things like fibre content and the number of plies, whether you use a single, superwash, natural fibres that will make your socks stronger, and all those sorts of things. So it was actually a really interesting read, and I did what I did. It's highly unusual for me to pick up a knitting book like this and read it from cover to cover, but I find with Clara Parks's books I tend to do that. I even go through and read all the introductions to the patterns and whatnot, so yeah. So that was really interesting. If you're thinking about knitting socks without nylon, or about trying cotton socks and that sort of thing, it's a really good read and really cheap if you can pick it up for a penny. So anyway, that's what I was waffling on about last time when you couldn't hear me. So I had finished those socks, and I went for a whole 10 days without having any socks on the needles at all. And it was partly because of that finish 3 projects, start 1 thing rule I had inflicted upon myself. But I was knitting away on some other projects and just decided that I fancied casting on some new socks. So the 3 project rule went out the window, and I cast on some socks. Have a swig of coffee. Keep the brain cells going. So I have them here in a bag that I made. And they are toe-up socks that I am knitting on higher needles. I'm using 2 yarns because there's, as you can see, there's a coordinating one. It's West Yorkshire Spinners Signature. Is it Signature? Yeah, Signature 4-ply. And the grey colour is Poppy Seed. And the striping one is, I was actually given this by a lovely chum, it's Wood Pigeon. Yeah, and I'm knitting those on 2.5mm higher needles. And I am using the Fish Lips Kiss Heel pattern for the very first time. I thought, in the interests of science and sock technology, I ought to try it out. So I'm knitting these for the hairy man, and I have made a template of his foot. And at the moment I'm feeling a bit cynical about this whole process, partly because I think the pattern is something like 16 pages long, and most of it seems to be a sales pitch. It's a bit like reading an infomercial, and as I've already purchased the pattern, I don't feel like I need the sales pitch. But anyway, I have read through it and I have made the foot template as it recommends in the pattern, and am following the instructions for the perfect fitting sock. The other thing that I feel a bit cynical about is that it has you make, well, the assumption is that your commercial socks fit you well, and well, the hairy man's commercial socks never seem to the heels are always in the wrong place, they always seem to be overstretched somewhere, they don't fit him particularly well at all. But I'm hoping that this sort of guide and the measurements and all that sort of thing will mean that he ends up with a pair of socks that fit him better than his other socks, so that will be interesting. I have a confession actually. This is the very first thing I've ever knitted for the hairy man. We've been together for about 5 years. I'm not worried about a sweater curse or anything weird like that, but he seemed to be quite resistant to me knitting anything for him. I mean, he would never wear a hat or a scarf or something like that. And I've been trying to get to the bottom of this for quite some time, because he does like that I spend a lot of my time knitting. And at first I just thought that he thought he didn't really need anything. And the other thing is, he really likes that I knit for all of our nieces and nephews and extended family and all that sort of stuff. I think he takes a little bit of pleasure out of my gift knitting when he sees, you know, one of the little kids in our lives running around in something I've knitted. I think he thinks that's rather marvellous. But recently I was chatting to him about it, and what came out was that actually he's not particularly careful with his clothes, and he was really worried that he would ruin, that I would knit something for him, that he would ruin it in some way, and that I would be distressed by that. And I think, like, when I give something as a gift, when I give away a knitted thing, I think you've really got to let go of it. You know, if someone wears it and they ruin it, well, that's just how life goes, you know. So anyway, to sort of counteract this, I have set myself a goal for the year. His birthday is quite late in the year, and so I have decided that I am going to knit 3 pairs of socks for his massive size 11 feet this year. And my reasoning behind that is that if I knitted him 1 pair of socks, they would be special. If I knit him 3 pairs of socks, then they're just a number of socks that he has that have been made by me that can go into his regular rotation. And if he wears a hole in them, well, so what? I can darn it, fix it, whatever. So anyway, I'm going to try out the fish lips kiss heel and maybe some other constructions on these huge feet. And some different yarns as well. Yeah, so that is the sock segment. Actually, so while I have this particular knitting bag out, Colin Machia had asked me what I keep in my knitting bag and in my notions pouch. And I actually recently have put together a mini notions pouch, a mini notions tin. that I keep in whatever knitting bag. I don't have a whole lot of these, I just have one that I keep in the knitting bag that I'm using most often. And this is a tin that a friend gave me from, it came from the Travel Knitter with some stitch markers and other bits in it. Yeah, and inside I have, not terribly much at the moment, I've got some stitch markers there, which I just keep on a safety pin. I keep a progress keeper in here, but that's attached to the socket at the moment. I have a darning needle in here, you probably can't see that at all. A darning needle, it looks like a darning needle, nothing special there. And I have a little piece of tape measure as well. I think there's about 50 centimetres here, which I find on the go is usually enough. Even if you're knitting a jumper, you can always sort of like inchworm it along and work things out. And it just saves carrying around a whole tape measure. It was broken anyway, so I just cut it up. I think I started it, I've got a few of these, so I started at 1 metre with this and finished at 1 metre 50. So yes, the only thing I'd like to add to that is a little pair of snips or something that I can cut ends with, and then I shall feel like I have a pretty good minimalist notions kit in my knitting bag at all times. I don't feel like I need to carry around a lot of other paraphernalia. So yes, that's my mini notions kit that I keep with my current project. I have a bigger notions bag and I shall pull that out one day and show you what I have in there as well. So yes, thank you for your question, Columachia. So this is the hat segment, and I have been working away on, I think last time I had just received the yarn for the Croft House hat. And I started knitting this pretty much as soon as it arrived, and I got up to the end of this third row of hooses and discovered that I had made a fundamental error after the ribbing, in that I hadn't done the round of increases that was called for, and so I had a small hat, and I had been looking at it thinking it was small and thinking, oh well, I'll just make a bigger version for me later. And then I realised that my crown shaping wasn't working and it had all gone horribly wrong, and for a moment I felt quite gutted, but then I ripped it all back and actually felt better about restarting it, because this one is going to fit me. It's not going to be loose and slouchy, it'll be a beanie style. I haven't woven in any ends yet, so I still have all that fun to come. And I'm adding in an extra row of hooses. So I've moved from small village to suburb sized. Yeah, and I'm really enjoying it. Well, actually, having knitted these rows of hooses twice, I'm actually looking forward to the crown shaping now. That's the next bit that I have to do, so I'm quite chuffed about that. So a lot of people have complimented me on the colours that I chose for Croft House, and I wanted to share with you kind of the process I went through for choosing those colours, because picking colours and putting them together is not something that comes naturally to me. I fret over it and dither and change my mind and decide that things aren't working and rip it out. So I don't think I'm some sort of naturally talented artistic type that just chucks things in and it looks good. That's just not how it works here. So I kind of wanted to explain the methodology I used for picking out the colours for Croft House. So the first thing I did was to sit down and have a good look at the pattern to see if there was sort of any sort of colour theory that had gone into the colour choices for the samples that were shown. The nice thing is there's quite a number of samples there. And what I had noticed was that Ella Gordon had she had chosen a main colour that you see most predominantly. So in my hat it's this tealy colour, and then she had picked a background colour that was quite similar, sort of like a much lighter version of that same colour to use as the background for one row of hooses. So sort of a dark shade and a light shade of the same colour. And then she'd chosen an accent colour in 2 different shades for the other rows of hooses. So that's these 2. And they were pretty much in exact contrast, so at 2 different sides of the colour wheel. And then she had just put in another neutral that kind of tied in with that accent colour. So when I decided to start my Croft House hat, I got my massive shade card. I love this shade card out. It's like opening a paint box. And I was sort of thinking about what colour do I want it to be? Woo! Look at all the colours! You can have any of them. But I'm not usually one for pinks, but I kept coming back to this melon colour here. That one there. Reds and pinks always blow out on camera, so they're difficult to see. And it's not a colour that I think really suits me or anything, but I just really loved it, so I decided I wanted to have that colour in my hat. So I knew I needed a colour to coordinate with that, and the ones that are actually sitting right next to it are much pink and less warm than that lovely melon colour. But I noticed when I looked up a few rows that the cardinal, was it the cardinal colour? Yes, the cardinal colour up here, so here's the colour I was looking at, and the one with my other finger is the one I chose to go with it. They've used some of this fibre and spun it in with this fibre to make this other colour, and so they actually go together quite well. If you look closely you can see flecks of the fuchsia colour in that darker colour. You won't be able to see it on this because it's just not detailed enough, but you have to take my word for it that it's there. So then I got out my handy dandy colour wheel on my phone. Stand by. So I just have an app on my phone, and I jiggled it around until I found, why is that not working? Oh, it's gone away, come back. I jiggled it around until I found sort of a warm pink, like that melon colour, like that. And then I selected, up the top here, there's a menu, and I selected the complementary option, and it basically said put a teal with that. So that's what I did. I just picked out a couple of teal colours that I thought would go really nicely together with that. So I picked the darker teal there for the main colour, partly because it goes with my eyes nicely as well. And then a much lighter tealy colour, actually it looks a bit blue on there, a much lighter tealy colour for the background. And then for the neutral, this particular neutral has little flecks of a warm pink in, so it goes quite well with that. And that's pretty much how you see, I didn't just go, oh, wouldn't that look nice together. I was much more clinical than that. And there was much dithering about. I didn't do this in 10 minutes. I had it sitting around for a couple of days, milling on it. What have I got the wrong thing? I had these balls of yarn in my cart for some time. But anyway, so it's actually worked out rather well, and I'm really pleased with that. But if you're sort of a bit scared of putting colours together, then I would really suggest that maybe you have a look online and read about colour theory, and that you find an app that you can put on your phone. What's this one actually called? This one's just called Colour Wheel. So I'm sure you could download that. I didn't pay anything for it. And it's just a really useful way of picking out colour combinations. Play around with it. And it gives you an idea of what you might put together. So yes, that was how I chose the colours for my Croft House hat. So the last thing I wanted to talk to you about was one of my favourite hand knits, and as I was already talking about hats, I thought I would talk to you about my favourite hat pattern which I've put on. I'm not sure I've got the hair right, but you know, I'm sure you don't want me to watch me sort of trying to fix my hair here. So let me see if I can go like this, and can you see it? The pattern is in circle, and it is by Woolly Wormhead, and it was her mystery hat knit along, and this is probably one of my most successful mystery knit alongs ever. And I knit it in a 4-ply blacker yarn, which was Hebridean mohair, and I really like it. I have knitted another one for my mother-in-law actually, out of some other black yarns, and the thing that I like about it is that it looks really smart on. It's kind of got quite a tailored look to it, so I think it looks really good. And it also, you start by knitting a really long tube, so you have, even though it's 4-ply, you have this doubled over section that goes over your ears and really keeps the wind out, keeps things nice and warm. Because it's 4-ply though, it's actually really easy to fold up and put in your pocket as well, which I find with heavier weight hats, it's a bit of a faff. If you get too warm and you want to take it off, you end up with this really bulky thing that you're carrying about. So that's the other thing I really like about it. And the other thing is that the button that I used here, I'm going to hold my head at this funny angle again, is actually one that I got in Húsavík in Iceland. Some of you can probably speak or know more about Iceland and Icelandic than I do, and might know that I'm saying that incorrectly. I had been whale watching, and I wandered into this little craft shop with this lovely lady with shaky handwriting, and found these beautiful stone, there's some type of stone buttons, and she packed them up for me in a little bag that was made out of an old pamphlet taped together and reused. And I think I still have the remaining buttons in that little bag because, I don't know, it was just a nice handmade element to my handmade purchase. I did use one of these buttons to put on my mother-in-law's hat as well, because they just look so nice. And I was so gutted. I nearly lost this hat one day, and I think I was more gutted about losing the button than I was the hat, because after all I can always knit another hat. I could always go back to Iceland and get another button, I suppose, but that seems a bit more extreme. But I wear this a lot, and I have been wanting to knit myself a new hat, just for fun and a change. And I keep looking at other designs, but I just find this one so wearable and so nice, and maybe I should just knit the same hat again, but I feel like I should knit something different. So I just haven't. Actually, I've knitted the Croft House hat, so there you go. I saw something I really like and branched out. But I really like the look of this hat and the wearability of it, so it's definitely a favourite, and it probably is a pattern that I will do again. So that is all I have to say about hats. However, I am really interested to hear what your favourite hat is. Is there a pattern that you've particularly liked, or did you have a moment where yarn and pattern came together in perfect synchronicity? Is that even a word? Where everything just worked out. Have you never knitted a hat before and you're looking for hat pattern advice? Perhaps you can pop over and have a look and see what people are sharing. I'd love to see your favourite hat. And hear about the things that really worked and what didn't work, and whether or not you enjoyed the pattern, and that sort of thing. If you pop over to the thread for this episode, I'd be really interested to hear. Perhaps you're on your first hat and you'd like to show us how it turned out. That would be rather nice, and show us what you're knitting it in. That would be really good, and we can have a chat amongst ourselves and share some information about our favourite hats. And you know, what worked well, and maybe what looked good when we finished the hat but wasn't so good to wear, or you know, all of that sort of thing. And so what I've decided to do, whilst I was at the Edinburgh Yarn Festival, I picked up an extra copy. This is the pristine one that I haven't crinkled of the Croft House hat, and this is a free download, but I thought it might be rather nice if you are participating in the discussion thread for this episode and showing off your hats, to send off this lovely hard copy version on card out to someone. So on Monday the 9th of May, I am going to randomly draw from the discussion thread for this episode and send some lovely person just a copy of the lovely hard copy of this pattern, just for fun, just to share that with you. So I thought that was rather nice. It's getting a bit hot in here with a hat on. But anyway, it's been lovely to chat to you today. I feel like I haven't made sense very much, but I hope I have, and it would be wonderful to hear from you and see all your wonderful hats. Cheerio!